Hey, hey. This is Francisca, and this is my mid-crisis life. So, yesterday, I had a family friend, a friend of my mum's, ask me if I could host a dinner party for her, because she came to a thing that I hosted back in April, and I think she just had a really good time, like playing games and messing around and all the rest of it. So she wanted to do something similar, and she asked me, oh, "Okay, can you help me out? Can you host this thing?" Anyway, she'd invited all of these people, including like family, my kids, lots of people that she knew, her family, whatever else. Um, and so a couple of people dropped out last minute, which, to be fair, it was kind of understandable. Somebody's grandchild was in hospital, someone else was really sick and couldn't get on the train, etc., etc. But I have another friend who dropped out last minute, and in all honesty, this friend is like quite unreliable. Like, they're known to be quite unreliable. And as soon as they dropped out, I'm not gonna lie, like I was a little bit annoyed. I was a tad irritated, right? Because it's just kind of typical, right? And anyway, I went and did what I was doing. I had the whole evening, whatever else, and it was a really good evening and blah blah blah. And but the thing is, it got me to thinking, right? Okay, there's like this balance that I have that's like, on the one side, I'm not really particularly invested in what other people do. If they make poor choices, or they do things that are harmful to themselves, or even if they do things that are harmful to me, more time I'm just like, all right, cool. That's kind of on you, Like, it doesn't really say anything about. I don't think it says much about what somebody thinks of you just because they treat you or they make decisions that are poor, that affect you, right? I think a lot of the time we, as people, tend to be like, well, for example, oh, that person didn't come. They just don't even care anything about me. They don't care that I put in all this effort. They never think about me. Da, 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 and on it could go. So there's a big part of me that's like that. That's just like, it's not really personal. I know it's not. Like, there's no inclination in that person's head where they're like, you know what I feel like doing today? I feel like hurting this other person. I feel like fucking up their day. I feel like pissing this person off. So I'm going to do this. Not really. Like, people are way more invested and interested in themselves than they are in anyone else. So it's like, part of me is like, I know it's not personal. So in that sense, I'm just like, nah, I don't really care. But then there's another part of me that's like, you know, integrity for me is such a high value. I value it so highly. So I'm like, just do the things that you say you're going to do. Um, Stick to the agreements, follow things through. This is like a big value for me. But I know that it's not necessarily a big value for everybody, right? So again, it can't be personal if somebody doesn't do that. So anyway, I had a little bit of a mini tantrum, like quietly to myself, and then got over it because I was just thinking about these exact things, right? It doesn't really matter. It's not personal to you. Chill the fuck out. But one of the things that it did make me think about, one of the things that I was like, that was like kind of going around in my head when I was a little bit annoyed, was like, oh, why can't this person just be more reliable? Like, why can't they? Like, I'm reliable. I do what I say I'm going to do. Why can't I do that? And then it made me think, okay, but you did. Um, so then actually, after that, it made me think about, okay, why can't I just have someone in my life who is an all rounder, you know? And I thought, well, the thing is, you want someone to be reliable, right? You had someone in your life who was reliable. You had a friend who was very, very reliable. But, you know, unfortunately, even though they were reliable, there were, how can I put it? they were somewhat emotionally unstable. Let's put it that way. And then, you have someone who spends, like, that you really enjoy spending time with, but that person happens to not be reliable. You have someone who will, do things for you, um, kind of like acts of service. They'll do things for you. They'll look after you when you're there. But at the same time, it's like there's no intellectual like growth happening within that relationship. And then you have people that feed your intellect, Fran, but unfortunately those people can't spend any time with you because they're not around you. Like, you have someone who does spend a lot of time with you but doesn't give. So it's kind of like within all the relationships, they're meeting these different needs, but with those different needs come deficits, right? Because everybody is multifaceted, right? Nobody's all of one thing. And it made me think about like love language, firstly. So it made me think about, okay, definitely the way that we give love is the way that we want to be shown love. So, for example, I have someone who gives me a lot of words of affirmation, but also it's extremely emotionally draining in other ways, right? I have someone who, gives gifts. I wouldn't really say it's gifts because it's not like I am being bought watches and diamonds and stuff, but someone who helps like financially, but is not emotionally attuned, is not emotionally available to me, and so on and so forth, right? What am I saying? So I think that firstly, the things that irritate me about other people are just the way that I choose to love others, right? And when I don't feel like I'm being loved in the same way, I find that very irritating. And I think that that's quite a common thing. And I think it's something that a lot of people feel. Anyway, I think it's something that's very common that people feel, and then people feel like, their relationship should end or their friendship should end because that person is not demonstrating love to them in the same way that they would expect it, which is just the same way that they give it, right? So it's important to appreciate how everybody shows up in your life. So I think that's the first point. But then after that, I was kind of thinking to myself, okay, I'm a bit of an all-rounder, right? So I'm usually quite emotionally attuned to my friends. I'm good to spend time with. I will, help them like practically if they need it. So I'm giving those kind of acts of service. I hug and I want to be close, like physically, to my friends. What else? I do spend money on them. I'm very generous. I am reliable. Like, I am like practically sound, emotionally sound, like all the rest of it, right? So I am quite a big all-rounder. And it kind of made me think, like, why can I not meet somebody very arrogantly? I was thinking, why can't I just meet someone who's like me, who's just perfect, like me, the perfect friend, the perfect fucking person. And as I was saying it to myself, although in some ways it's true, I do want to meet someone who fulfills me in more than just one way, and it doesn't have to always be that because they're giving in one way there has to be a deficit somewhere else, right? I do want to meet someone who's like me, who has a lot of attributes that they invest in the relationships that there are around them. That is definitely what I want. And a lot of my friends are like, oh, I wish I could meet a man like you. Can I just meet a man that's like you but just a man? And I'm like, listen, if there is a man that's like me and you meet him, then he belongs to me. You can't have him. I'm not sharing. So yeah, anyway, whatever, right? So I was thinking about that, but then like the arrogance and the conceitedness of that statement kind of hit me. Like, oh, because I'm so perfect, right? I am very, very sure that the people that are in my life that are closest to me probably do have things to say about the way that I'm in relationship with them. You know, there are things that Fran always does, or that Fran never does, that affect other people, you know, and it affects the relationship, but I just can't see it. It made me think about that idea of how people are so multifaceted, but perhaps to others are more two-dimensional. Because someone said it to me the other day and it kind of blew my mind. He was like, we live in a 2D world, we don't live in a 3D world. And I'm like, we live in a 3D world? He's like, no. He said, you know, the sun, you see the sun and you see the sun as a 2D image. He said, even if you flew directly up to the sun, you would still not be able to see it as 3D. You wouldn't be able to see the back of it, right? And I feel like sometimes that's how we see other people. We see other people in this kind of like 2D way. And I always think about like people in my life that I hate, right? There's not many people that I hate. There is like literally 3 people in my life that I'm just like, I actually really hate you. I think it's such a strong word. It's such a strong word to use, hate. And I always tell my kids, don't use it, man. You may dislike somebody immensely, but to hate someone is very different. And I guess I would probably say that I still probably don't hate them. Like, I'm using it a bit more facetiously. I don't hate them because I don't really hate anyone, because the amount of energy that it takes to hate somebody, like, but if I hate anything, I think it's their actions and the way that they've treated me, and the trauma and the pain and the harm that they've caused in my life, right? At the time, at different junctures, and kind of like the long-standing, long-term harm that's been caused off the back of that. But even these people that I really do despise, right? I look at them and I think there is somebody, yeah, who thinks that you are just the bee's knees. I despise you, but someone else thinks that you're absolutely fucking great. And for me, it's completely unfathomable that somebody could ever like this person. I'm like, you like this person? Like, is there something wrong with you? Like, are you okay? Like, blink twice if you need help. You know what I mean? Like, the fuck do you mean? But it's about, I guess, the individual relationship that you have with each person, right? And how that person presents themselves to you, and the kind of experiences that you've had that have brought out a particular characteristic in that person. And that might be just because of the environment that you were in at the time. It might be because the place that person was in at the time, like the mind space, or, you know, the evolutionary cycle or pattern or whatever it is that stage of evolution that they were in at that time that's caused them to be like that. It may be the role that person plays in your life that causes them to be different, because everybody shows up differently for everybody. And I'm trying to think what's the kind of like point in its entirety. I guess it's this, that relationships are really personal, in the sense that the interaction and the interplay between you and that other person, and all of kind of like the extenuating circumstances around that relationship, create a vacuum that is completely specific and personal to you and that person, right? And that's why everybody can be seen as everything, and everybody can be seen as not everything, right? Because our perspective is our reality. But also in that it's very personal, because it's been engineered in a way that's completely individual and organic, which is why we can all see someone as a different person, and one person can be a multitude of different people. Even though it is really personal in that sense, it's also not personal, because the way that person engages with you within that interpersonal, individualized, organic type of relationship that you have is not actually personal to you, because the choices that they make are more about them than they are anything to do with you or the relationship that you guys have engineered together. So I think it's just important to check our perspective of other people particularly when people let us down, particularly when we feel like that person is not loving us in the way that we want to be loved, particularly when we feel like there's some kind of disconnect or some fracture in the relationship, and in a relationship that feels important. It's important to check your perspective, and whether or not your perspective is firstly based on, am I just expecting the same thing from this other person that I would give? Am I expecting them to love me in the way that I love them? And is that reasonable? Check your perspective in the sense of like, is anything that this person's doing really actually about me? Even though it's directly directed at me, if they are saying, I hate you and I am going to shoot you with this gun, really, is it about me or is it about where they're at the time? And also just remember that this person might be one thing to you, but they're something to someone else because they're a completely multi-dimensional, multifaceted human being with multiple layers. And they cannot always show up in that same role for you because that's what you need them to be. Yeah. I think that's the thought that I just regurgitated all over this video. I think so. I'll watch it back and see if I actually made any sense and if I said anything that was anything like anything that I actually wanted to say. So, let's see, something to be grateful for. I'm really grateful for last night and the fun that we had last night. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work. I basically did everything, but it was nonetheless a lot of fun, and everybody had a really good time. I think that means a lot to me. Yeah. Okay. That's it.